All right, test 1, 2. Andy, let me know how that's coming through or not on the live stream. Do you need me to keep talking, Andy? We're good? All right. We got a couple people wandering in, so I'm just going to wait for a second. Yeah, we do have popcorn. If you didn't get popcorn, it's on the back counter if you want some. We're good? All right. Okay. So, looks like we have enough people. Can you turn us down just maybe a little bit, Andy, the mic? Do you know which? Because it feels a little loud. And I've got way down here. Okay, test. Yeah, that's better, I think. If not, it'll be fine. I just will try not to yell on the screen. Yeah, we should. If you need an extra one, I can steal some from that table down there and all that good stuff. We have, well, again, I've got a bunch on that table where no one's at. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started on the discussion question, and that is, so at your tables, if you don't know everybody, share your names. And the question is, did you ever get sent to the principal's office? Okay. Now, if you did get sent to the principal's office, you do not have to say why. Okay. Because we would rather use our imaginations and guess. So, for me, I got, let's see here. I got sent to the principal's office once in elementary school, once in high school, and then I didn't go to the principal's office, but the principal made a special visit to me 2 more times in high school. So that's my record. So going back to what I said earlier, you don't have to share. Why? So, well, no, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure the principal never forgave me. But I don't have to share because that's the rule I made. Okay, so go ahead, share your names. And did you ever get sent to the principal's office? And again, you don't have to share why. And go. Do we need more handouts? Does anyone need a handout? Because I can go make copies if I need to. We're good? Okay.
Test, 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 test. That might be better. Okay.
So for those of you who might be watching online, if you want to copy the notes they have here, just send a message to Andy, and he can get you a copy of those. Okay, so if you go to your handout right away, there's just 5 things I want you to write down about the city of Philippi. And yeah, we are starting the book of Philippians. I think we're going to finish the book of Philippians. We are not going to get to Colossians. So either A, I will do that in the fall, or I'll figure out something. So, anyway, the first thing about Philippi is you can just write down it's a city in Macedonia. It's now in modern day Greece. Okay. But it's a city of Macedonia. If you want to know how to spell Macedonia, it's right here. Now, number 2 is that Philippi was not considered the capital, per se, of Macedonia. That would be Thessalonica. But Philippi was a major city of Macedonia. So even though it wasn't the capital, it was still a significant city. Now, point 3 is Paul visits the city in his second missionary journey, and the rough dates of that. Again, anytime we give dates, they're rough dates. But 50 to 52 is when it was somewhere in there that he visited the city of Philippi. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to read in the book of Acts everything the book of Acts records about that visit. Actually, a number of well-known stories happen in Philippi. Paul writes his letter to the Philippians, and again, as I've said before, these dates are sometimes debated, but I think the best explanation is that Paul is writing from Rome in 60 to 62 AD while he is under house arrest in Rome. So you could say it's one of his Rome prison letters written somewhere in the 60 to 62 range. Again, those things are often debated, but it makes the most sense to me. And then the theme, a couple themes that you will find in the book, or again, letter, is it'll talk somewhat about persecution, and it'll talk somewhat about just kind of some heresies that were floating around. And I think I've said this before, what you have to understand is that the early church was super fluid. Again, it was exploding and growing dramatically. And it was hard to keep up, the organization of it was hard to keep up with the growth. And so you had all sorts of people claiming things about Jesus that just was not coming from the apostles. And so you were always battling this stuff where people were coming in and they were trying to take over and say, oh, yeah, Paul, he's no good. Don't listen to him. He's this, that, and the other thing. Listen to us. That kind of stuff was going on all the time. And so the leaders of the church were always fighting that. Okay? So what I would like you to do, do I have another? Let me think here. I may have another. Oh, no, that's for later. Okay. I'll put it on there, but don't pay any attention to it. Don't look at the screen. I know what you're going to do. All you're going to do is look at the screen. That's okay. What I would like you to do first at your tables. Again, Paul's visit to Philippi is recorded in Acts 16, and everything that the book of Acts says about that visit, we are going to read first. Again, if those dates are accurate, this happens 10 years before the letter is written. All right? And so what I want you to do at your tables is read Acts 16. Start with just reading 12 to 15. Just read those handful of verses. And then answer those 3 questions. And then stop and wait for me to summarize all that. And then we'll move on to the rest of Acts 16, okay? So read verses 12 to 15. Have someone read that at your table and read it out loud. And then at the table, just kind of discuss those questions. And go. Oh, okay, so where did they go when they got to Philippi? Where'd they go? They went outside the city gate to the river where we expected to find a place of prayer, and they sat down and began to speak to the women who gathered there. Now, this is on the Sabbath. And what Paul would do when he got to a city is he would locate the synagogue. So that's what they go looking for. Now they go looking outside of the city gate. That alone is rather interesting, that they go looking for the synagogue outside of the city gate. Now, the place where the Jews would gather, that could be a reference to a synagogue. It also just might be a reference to the place where whatever Jewish population there was in Philippi is where they gathered. Now, in order to have a synagogue, you needed at least 10 men. The fact that no men are mentioned at all in this passage could lead you to believe that there was no actual structure. And why they would be meeting by the river is if they need any water for any of their religious ceremonial practices, well, now you've got water. But the point is that Paul is going to look for the Jewish population that is there. And apparently in Philippi, it's not a very big one. They may not even have enough men to have a synagogue. And so who did they find? They found a group of women praying. And what Lydia is described as a worshiper of God. Sometimes there are people who are in the New Testament who are called God-fearers. It's most likely that this description of Lydia being a worshiper of God is describing her as a God-fearer. A God-fearer is a Gentile who is demonstrating interest in the Jewish faith but has not converted yet. And for Lydia to be a part of this prayer group as a God-fearer shows quite a bit of interest in the Jewish faith. And so she is the one that is recorded who believes. Now, what do we learn about Lydia? She's a seller of purple cloth. Again, we always have to ask ourselves, why do you need to know that? Why would Luke include that detail? Now, sometimes it's just, well, that's just who she was, and he just included that detail. Most of the time, that's not the case. Okay, there's a reason why I included the detail. Purple cloth, would it be a luxury item? That would be an item of royalty and the elite. So the fact that she was a dealer in purple cloth meant that her clientele was the wealthy, which most likely means she was wealthy. And if she was wealthy and was a significant player in the early church of Philippi, it would be good to know, now, how did she come to faith? Especially if she was the first one. Where is she from? Thyatira. Okay? Thyatira is in Asia. Thyatira, for those of you who know the book of Revelation, is one of the cities mentioned in the book of Revelation. And so Thyatira is right here. Just for reference, Ephesus is right here. This is modern day Turkey. Okay? So Thessalonica is here, which would put Philippi somewhere in this area, but it's a part of Macedonia, which is modern day Greece. Okay? So for whatever reason, she is no longer in Thyatira. She has gone over to Macedonia and the city of Philippi. and she's, again, a dealer of purple cloth. And it'd be pure speculation as to figure out why she was there. But she would have been wealthy. It's highly unlikely that someone who was a dealer in purple cloth wasn't wealthy. Okay, but she was a Gentile showing interest in the Jewish faith, and she believed, and she invited people. She invited the Paul and Luke and others into her home, and it was her household that was baptized first. Okay, so now let's move on. Any questions about any of that? Now read the rest of Acts 16 up to verse 40. Have people take turns because that's a lot for one person to read, but I would like you to read it out loud, and then just simply answer those two questions. One is list the challenges Paul and Silas faced in Philippi. So as somebody is reading, someone else may be listening for challenges. And then what are some things that Lydia and the jailer have in common? Okay, and so go ahead and read 16 to 40 and go. Okay, so we'll just keep moving here because I always think I have more time than I do. So what were the challenges Paul and Silas faced? What's one of them? They were harassed by the demon. What, another one? They kept sharing, even after the dire conditions, they kept going. Yep. What else happened to them? And before they were put in jail, before they were beaten, they were slandered. It says these men are Jews and are throwing our city into an uproar. That wasn't true. That's called slander. And if you've ever been slandered, it's not a fun experience. Because once someone says something to you that is not about you, that is not true, that sticks with you. That doesn't just go away because it's not true. So they're slandered, and then they're flogged and thrown into prison. And the thing that we tend to do is we read, oh yeah, they got flogged and thrown into prison. No, they got flogged. Let's just hit the pause button on that one. Okay? The best way to explain flogging, and this may not be language you're used to hearing in a Bible study, they got the crap kicked out of them. Like with rods and whips. They, again, stripped, which means they were naked. And then they got the crap kicked out of them with bats and like their faces would have been deformed. They would have been swelling. They would have had bruises. I'm sure that they may not necessarily have had broken bones, but they would have had cracked bones. They got the crap kicked out of them. It was brutal. Like, I don't think we can really, I don't know if it was like, if you've ever seen The Passion of the Christ and the flogging Jesus got, I don't know if it was quite to that extent, but it wasn't just, hey, we're going to slap you around a little bit. Okay? And then they're thrown in jail. And again, jail in first century Rome and jail today in America, that's not the same thing. It was not sanitary. It was not a good experience at all. Okay? So what happened to them, to me, and then you have this amazing story where they're in jail, they're singing hymns. For the record, they're not singing Amazing Grace and the Old Rugged Cross. Those hymns weren't written for another 1,600 years, okay? So don't envision the hymns we sing as the hymns they were singing, all right? But again, there's nothing wrong with those two songs. It's just those songs were 1,600 years after this event, or 1,700. And so they're singing, and it's midnight, and now there's this earthquake, and everyone is free. It's like this crazy thing. And now the jailer comes, and he's ready to kill himself because the prisoners are escaping. He's going to get killed anyway. And that's his conversion story. Like, he's got a pretty cool conversion story. But then if you look at some of the details, it says, so then at that hour of the night, the jailer took them, and what did he do? And what does he do? Washed their wounds. And again, that wasn't, hey, here's a Band-Aid. Again, they got the crap kicked out of them. It would have been traumatic. And then he gives them something to eat. And now daylight comes, and the magistrates hear that, let's see here. It was daylight. Magistrates said, please release those men. And when when they hear that they're Roman citizens, now we're in trouble. And they want to release okay, you can go. We're going to release you quietly. And Paul's like, nah, you just kicked the crap out of us. We're not letting you get away with that. We're calling you on the carpet here. What you did was wrong because we're Roman citizens. This is not okay. All right? Now, what were some things that Lydia and the jailer have in common? He and his whole household were baptized. Okay. What else? They also became believers. Let's combine those two things. But there's one other thing they have in common. Okay, I didn't think about that, but they both end up in Paul and his companion, Paul and Silas end up in both of their homes at one point. They're both Gentiles. They're both Gentiles. So the two major conversion stories happen in the Gentile community in Philippi. Okay? Now, I just want you to make a note of these stories we just read. Because in Philippians 1, Paul's going to talk about something, and I'm going to say, remember what he's referencing here. Because this is what happened is a major event. They got arrested for, well, first of all, they cast out a demon, get arrested for no reason, get flogged, get thrown in jail, are singing hymns, there's an earthquake, and the jailer becomes a believer. That's a story I'm going to tell 100,000 million times, because that's an amazing story. Okay? And again, it's part of the reason why I made it in the book of Acts. I realized that the Holy Spirit had something to do with that. But to me, yeah, if Luke is asking me what stories should I include in this account, well, you got to tell him about what happened at Philippi. That was crazy, man. Okay? So now we're going to move to the book of Philippians, so go ahead and turn there. But that's everything in the book of Acts about Philippians or Philippi. And there's only one other reference to the city of Philippi in all of the New Testament. It's in the letter to the Thessalonians. We're not going to go there, but you basically have read everything outside of the letter of the Philippians that there is to read about Philippi. Okay? And so now let's move to Philippians. And I want you to start by reading the first 11 verses of Philippians. And, turn your papers over. And there are two questions. What are some things that Paul says about the believers? And then what is Paul's prayer for them? That first question may be too generic. I wasn't crazy about that question, but it's the best I could do. So hopefully it's not too generic, but we'll just see what you come up with. But read those. Have someone read those 11 verses, break it up, and have two people read if you want. But then answer those two questions at your table and go. Okay, because I want to give you time because I have a pondering question for you, and I want to give you time to ponder that. But okay, first thing is, what are some things Paul says about the believers? Just throw out what you got, and we'll see how good my question was. What's that? Okay, you guys are great. Go ahead and be more specific than that. God's holy people? What? Is that what you were going to say? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. God will carry out his work to completion in them. Yes, that's good. What else? He thanked God for every remembrance of them. Good. What else? God's great. Good. What else? Partnership in the gospel from the begin. From the first day. Is that what yours says? From the first day. I wonder what that's a reference to. What else? The last thing I have is, I have you in my heart and I long for you. Okay? Partners in the gospel from the first day. You can see in some of this language the deep connection he has with him, with this church. And you have to remember, this church started with 2 households. And it was not, Gentile households, and it was kind of a rough go. Again, they got the crap kicked out of them, spent some time in jail, got slandered, and the jailer and Lydia were there with him from the beginning. And so whether or not those 2 were still alive would be pure speculation. But clearly there are people that at least knew those stories that he could say, you were with me from the beginning. And you can see this deep connection he has with them. Okay? Now, what was Paul's prayer for them? The love would abound. Yes. What else? Knowledge and depth of insight. Discern what is best and pure and filled with. Okay. So that these people, and again, we read some of this kind of stuff in Ephesians 2, or Ephesians also, that, again, things like love and knowledge and depth of insight, and to be able to discern what is best and pure, and to be filled with the fruit of righteousness. These are all things he wants them to continue to grow in, and there is this promise of completion. But I think the expectation was, well, as long as you're in this world, you're going to be growing. And there will be a day of completion. Now, here is my pondering question. And what you have to understand about my pondering questions is pondering questions are not meant to establish some kind of doctrine, like this is what you have to believe. Pondering questions are just meant to get you thinking about things that maybe we don't think about. And the pondering question is gonna be about heaven. And what we ponder about heaven, I hope, has some potential now implications. So here is the question to ponder. And again, this is just a thought exercise. We're not trying to establish doctrine. I'm not trying to say this is what heaven's going to be like. It's just a question, okay? So I don't want anyone to freak out. Will heaven be a place where we will, in some way, shape, or form, continue to grow? Or will we just be perfect and remain the same forever and ever? Now, clearly, Scripture teaches there is no sin or evil. So any kind of growth that has to do with overcoming sin or evil is not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, eternity is a pretty long time. And when we're in heaven, we just reach the status that we are perfect and nothing about us will ever change? Or will there still be some things that we grow in? And again, whether that's things that we think are spiritual things or things that we think are not spiritual things. Are we still going to be growing in the afterlife? Or do we hit completion and we're just going to be the same, and whatever we do, it's going to be great? Okay? And it's going to be great either way. But it's just talk about it. What do you think? Again, I'm not looking for a right or wrong answer. It's just if it's one way, what are the implications for now? And if it's another way, what are the implications for now? Okay, so let's just try it. There should be absolutely no fighting. Just if one of you says no, we're gonna hit completion, we're gonna be perfect, and we're never gonna grow anymore, that's great. If anyone says no, I think I could still improve on my golf game. Yeah, okay. Then yeah, okay, there will be growth in him. So go ahead and just talk about it, think about it, and we'll just spend like a couple minutes on it. And if I start hearing yelling and screaming, we're gonna quit. And go. Okay, that's probably dangerous enough. That's probably enough time. For me, what I like to do is, we have these questions about faith and oftentimes about heaven. And I just like to think about them without necessarily having to have an answer. Like the classic question is, will my dog be in heaven? Well, first of all, which dog? Okay, if it's Scooby and Whiskers, yeah, I want those dogs in heaven. If it's Mushroom and Cooper, Oliver's on the fence, it depends on the dog, first of all. But the second thing is well, okay, so let's just pretend it's a dog that you really love and miss. And it would be like, well, yeah, I would, to me, heaven wouldn't be as enjoyable without my dog. Don't base it on animated movies. Someone said all dogs go to heaven. And well, dogs don't have souls, and only things that are souls are in heaven. Look, God can do whatever he wants, all right? If God says you want whiskers, here's whiskers. I think God can do that. But the question is really, well, why is that important to you? Because really what that shows is what's most important to you. Because some people, I joked about golf. And, people who are diehard golfers are like, well, there better be golf in heaven. Otherwise, I don't know if I want to be there. Well, what does that tell you? That tells you that in order for heaven to be heaven, there has to be golf. And so in order for life to be good, there has to be golf. is that really the most important thing about life? You see, and so to me, some of these questions can kind of reveal you value your dog, you value your hobby. These things are not necessarily bad. But if it gets to the point where heaven won't be that good if those things aren't there, well, is heaven just a place where everything you like is there? Right. There are things that what if there are better things? And what might those better things be? And if there are better things, maybe I should start pursuing those things now and not wait until heaven. See, to me, that's what I mean by you can have these pondering thoughts about heaven, but they have now implications. Where maybe if what's most important isn't my dog and golf, and what will make heaven heaven are other things, maybe I should start spending a little bit more of my time on those other things. Although I do want to fix my putting before. I got some real putting issues I need to work on. Okay? So that's what I like to have theological thought exercises where I'm not developing theology, where it's like I think about this and it's like, well, if it is true, what's the implication? If it's not true, what's the implication? And what does that tell me about what I should be doing now? That's sort of what I like to do. All right. Now, let's keep, oh, man. All right. What I'd like you to do is read those next 3 sections and do them one at a time. So read Philippians 1, 12 to 14, answer that question. Then read Philippians 1, 15 to 18, answer that question. And then read Philippians 1, 19 to 26, and answer that question. Do not move on to the last question. Just do those 3 questions, okay? But again, read the passage, answer the question, read the passage, answer the question, read the passage, answer the question, and go. Okay. I'm hoping you're able to get through these. We'll go through this. These should be fairly straightforward answers. These are not trick questions. So the first one, how does Paul view the fact that he's under house arrest and in chains? How does he view that? It doesn't bother him. Why not? Yeah, it's advancing the gospel. And he talks about, as a result, it's become clear throughout the whole palace guard, and he goes on to talk about it, that because I'm in chains, this stuff is happening. And so Paul sees the positive impact of his negative situation. Okay, so next one. What is it that causes Paul to rejoice? That Christ is preached, even if it's for bad motives. So Paul is not, he is bothered, but he's okay with people preaching Christ with bad motives as long as Christ is being preached. Even if it's scoundrels doing it. Okay? Again, he sees the positive impact of a negative situation. And then the last one, what are the two options for Paul's future? He's either going to keep preaching or he's going to die. And how does he kind of view that? He kind of views it as it's a win-win. Because whether I stay in chains and eventually released, then that's good for you, because I'll keep preaching. And if I die, well, it's kind of good for me, because then I'll be with Christ. So I really can't lose. Those are his two options. Now, and I've talked about this kind of stuff before, but this is just a good reminder. Look, God does not need everything to be perfect and pure in order to accomplish his purposes. I tend to be an idealist. I really am. And I get frustrated when I see the motives and actions of others who are not pure. And it makes me question everything they do. I'm not sure God is bothered by that as I am. Not that God approves it. That's not what I'm saying. But God seems to be perfectly comfortable people not having their act together, and maybe even sometimes being scoundrels, and still using them to advance his purposes. Like, we have thousands of examples of that. Well, but I would even be more gracious to the apostles than that. Name a 20th to 21st century scandal with a minister, and let's see how many we can come up with. Yeah, we can name them all. There's a bazillion of them. And bazillion's an exaggeration. It's not a bazillion. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It wasn't like Paul was happy with them. He wasn't happy with it. I do think he was as angry with them as I would be angry with them. But his bottom line is, hey, look, even in that situation, if Christ is being preached, that is what matters. And again, for me, I'm like, no. Wait. But then you think about, and again, I don't want to name names. My goal here is not to name this person and that person, that person. But we all know what we're talking about. And even some of the names we can think of, are you telling me nothing good came from their ministries? That's not true. Good things did come from their ministries. And some of them were scoundrels. I really struggle with that. But I think we have enough examples that God does that. Now, does God approve the scoundrelness of it all? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. But he still uses it. I would not. Okay? But God seems to be very comfortable working in these kinds of situations. Well, yeah, if you're a teacher and you mess up, yeah, I would in no way, shape, or form am I trying to minimize the consequences that certain people may be facing. I'm not trying to minimize it, because the harshest judgment, at least in Jesus' ministry, was for religious leaders who were scoundrels or unfaithful or something. So I'm by no means I'm trying to minimize that and saying, oh, yeah, all these guys are talking about it, it'll be fine. That's for God to decide. So that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying we have so many examples of God using these people that he seems to, he will work with those people to accomplish his goals. He will not use them just because they're scoundrels. He uses scoundrels all the time. And as you pointed out, everybody in the Bible that God used, obviously minus Jesus, had issues. So that's absolutely true. But I'm even going above and beyond some of that stuff. Although you could say, well, David was pretty bad. But here's the thing though, two things can be true at the same time. God can be disappointed and angry with our sin and shortcomings and still use them. Those two things can be true at the same time. It's not one or the other, it's both. He's disappointed and angry at our sinfulness and shortcomings, and he uses them. And you could say that about, God can be saddened and angry by injustice and tragedy and still use them. Both things can be true at the same time. And for me, it tends to be one or the other. But I think both in Scripture and just in how we've all experienced God, that those two things are true at the same time. So it's not excusing, say, oh, that sin's okay. No. Angry, disappointed, whatever word captures it for you, and he still uses them. Okay, last, because I don't have enough time for you to read this. The last question was, how is this passage connected to Acts 8:16? I'm just going to read those last couple verses and see if you can pick up on it. Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then, whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God. For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him. Since you are going through the same struggle, what are those next words? You saw I had, and now hear that I still have. What's he talking about there? He's talking about what we read about in Acts 16. You saw how I suffered. And he tells them, and you are sharing in that. And just as Paul stood firm, he tells them, stand firm. Don't let those who are opposing you keep you from doing what you need to do. And in essence, he's saying, you saw me do it. Do that. Because you believe in Jesus, you suffer with Jesus. And that was Paul's whole ministry. And he tells them, you saw it. You didn't just hear about it, you saw it. You saw what I look like after I got the crap beat out of me. Okay? And so I am calling you to do the same. And I think it's those kinds of things in the letter that if we don't know the context, we miss it. Because that little bit of the verse there, the same struggle you saw I had is loaded with meaning. You saw what it was that happened to me. And there's a connection there that when you have a shared experience, it goes pretty deep. And then for us, well, again, the takeaway for us is, well, yeah, we're going to suffer too. We didn't see what happened to Paul, but we're going to suffer too. Yeah. Yeah. you know, that is a great way of putting on a good, the positive part of what I just focused on the negative. You're going to suffer. And Carrie pointed out, yeah, but the church is going to grow. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, I guess, Carrie, church will grow even though we suffer. I guess historically it grows most when we suffer. No, that's actually a really profound, that's a great point that I missed. So that's absolutely 100% true. All right, well, let me pray. And then I thought I had 2 more weeks to finish Philippians. Andy asked me during the last discussion time, hey, how many more weeks do you really have? I got 1 more week. So next week, we're going to go through the last 3 chapters of Philippians. Don't ask me how we're going to do it. It's going to get done because I am out of town in 2 weeks. But I just want to point out, I was here for like 3 weeks in a row, so that's pretty good. This has been a crazy, it really is, as I think back at how much I've traveled this last semester. That's so, I've never traveled this much. It's crazy. All right, let me pray. Lord, again, we do thank you for your word and just how it encourages us and reminds us of so many of your truths. And Lord, we would ask that you would encourage us in the same way, that, Lord, to know that even though there are so many things that disappoint you and anger you and sadden you, that at the same time you're able to use them. And Lord, as we face different either injustices or tragedies or just the results of our own sin, that we would be encouraged that you don't need us to be perfect in order to use us for your glory, but Lord, always encourage us in faith.